yield.
Gentleman's time has expired. We're going to try to keep this brief. I know the Secretary has to go to the Middle East to meet with the King of Jordan. Mr. Moran from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here today. I want to start where Mr. Moskowitz left off just a second ago. Speaking about the withdrawal, he said, and I quote, "There were major mistakes made in Afghanistan." First of all, do you agree with that statement by Mr. Moskowitz?
I do.
Could you specify the mistakes that you believe were made in the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Yeah. I think the most fundamental mistake was, again, not recognizing that the fragility of the Afghan government, the Afghan security forces, and not anticipating across the government, and I take responsibility for this along with the other departments of government, in recognizing that there was a potential, more than the potential, a likelihood of very quick collapse by both the government and the security forces.
How would you advise a president in the future under similar circumstances to do something different? What different advice would you give to him or her?
I think we have to do what we did, but obviously we didn't see this piece of it, which is to continuously question the assumptions, to continuously prod and push on any assumptions, including about the durability of a government or the military forces.
Do you think it was a mistake to withdraw, even though the conditions preceding in the Doha Agreement had not been met by the factions in Afghanistan?
I do not. I believe it was the right thing to do to end America's longest war. I believe that our country is actually better for it, stronger for it. I believe our adversaries have seen that we were not going to get bogged down into another decade of war in Afghanistan, and that has been a good thing. And again, I just remind you that the basic choice, to the extent there was a choice, was between ending the war and leaving or escalating it, because part of the Doha Agreement was a commitment by the Taliban not to attack our forces between the time the agreement was signed and the withdrawal date that was set in the Doha Agreement was reached. Once that was breached, they would go back to attacking us. Our partners, our military determined we would have to send tens of thousands of forces back to Afghanistan.
I think I heard you say earlier that you didn't think there was a connection between the botched withdrawal and the aggression, the increased aggression by Russia as against Ukraine earlier. Did I hear you correctly say that?
That's correct.
When the withdrawal occurred, former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Ivo Dalder, warned a few days after President Biden's unconditional surrender to the Taliban that, quote, "Moscow and Beijing will look closely at how we react in one situation to set the stage for the other." So did you disagree with that then, or do you disagree with that now?
So what we saw, first of all, is that, of course, Russia had massed all of these forces well before the withdrawal or the decision, actually, to go forward with it. We saw that take place in the spring. Second, Russia has a long experience with Afghanistan. It probably knows better than anyone the folly of getting bogged down in that country. And what we've seen since is the United States marshaling more than 50 countries, coming to the defense of Ukraine and doing tremendous damage to Russia's efforts in Ukraine.
Let's look at what the Chinese said about this. On the second anniversary of the withdrawal, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said, quote, "On this date 2 years ago, the whole world witnessed the, quote, Kabul moment when the U.S. hastily withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. What happened in Afghanistan marked a military, political, and counterterrorism failure of the U.S. in Afghanistan." That's a quote by a Chinese government official. Do you think that our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the way that we handled it precipitated additional aggression by China towards Taiwan?
I don't. In fact, we've seen this build up for more than a decade. And again, as I said earlier, in 2008, we had 200,000 troops between Afghanistan and Iraq. That's when the Russians invaded Georgia. In 2014, we still had 12,000 troops in Afghanistan. That's when the Russians first invaded Ukraine. These decisions are made for their own reasons, and with Russia and Ukraine, or with China and Taiwan. This long predated any things we decided or did in
I want to ask real
Afghanistan.
quickly, as my time expires, about before and after our withdrawal. So if we're looking before and after the withdrawal, do you think that the situation in Afghanistan is better inside Afghanistan today or before withdrawal as it relates to, number one, the safety and security of women and young girls?
I think the situation is worse for women and young girls. There's no question about that.
What about the access and opportunities for education for women and young girls today or before withdrawal?
Worse. No question
And
about
the opportunities to enter the workforce for women today or before withdrawal?
Worse.
Do you think a leave-behind force, even a small force, may have created stability in the region, or would that not have been
That was
something
not
you
the
would-
choice. The choice was not leaving 2,500 people there. The choice was whether we were going to send tens of thousands of Americans back indefinitely with no guarantee of better results. It's also important to remember that by December 2020, the Taliban either controlled or contested territory that had 75% of the population of Afghanistan. Life for them then, including women and girls, was not good. But I agree with you, it's gotten worse.
Do you agree we need to take additional steps to protect the lives of women and young girls in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I agree we need to maximize every effort to do that.
Jones,
We
time
welcome working with you on
expired.
that.
Chair recognizes